Hi, this is Chris Ball from Mashpee TV with another Mashpee update. With me today is David Vieira, candidate for re-election to the 3rd Barnstable seat for state rep. David's been state rep for a number of years. He's up for re-election, and he's here today to tell us about himself, tell us about the problems, issues that he sees in the near future for Mashpee, and his ideas how to accomplish solving those. David, thanks very much for being here today.
Well, Chris, thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity to sit down and chat about what's happening in Mashpee in the district and reach out to the voters.
So, David, why don't you just, for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and take it from there. And we'll let you
I'm
go forward.
Dave Vieira. I'm from T-Ticket Village in East Falmouth. I was born and raised there. Some folks might remember the old Joe's driving range. Joe was my grandfather. I actually grew up in that property that's now T-Ticket Park. My family sold the property to the 300 committee to make a park and an outdoor classroom for the T-Ticket elementary school. They tore my house down to make the parking lot, but that's where I grew up. And I went to Falmouth Public Schools, graduated from Falmouth High School in 1993 on the Roll of Honor student there, and then went off to the American University in Washington, D.C. My father was the first Vieira to graduate from high school in our family. My grandfather only had a 5th grade education and then went to work on the farm. And so proud to be the first to go to college and then follow that up at Suffolk University to receive a master's in public administration in Boston. So over the years, I decided I was interested in public service because of a citizenship merit badge that I needed to do, citizenship in the community with the Boy Scouts. I was in Troop 42 in East Falmouth, and then later Varsity Team 1 at the Falmouth Rod and Gun Club. So at 12 years old, I had to go to town meeting and watch what was happening. My father was actually an elected town meeting member. In Falmouth, we have a representative town meeting, the only one on the Cape. And so we only had to go one night, kind of see what was going on, look at the budget. It was the annual meeting in April, and then come back and talk about it with our counselor. And I was really intrigued by this whole process of what was happening. And so in the car on the drive home, I asked my father, Dad, what do you have to do to be the moderator? And the moderator at the time was the late George Lebhertz, who went on to become a district judge here in Barnstable County. And my father said, are you crazy? You got to be up there in front of all those people, you got to know all the rules, you got to talk all the time. My father had been a town meeting member for over a decade, and he went to every meeting and voted, went to the coffee shops, talked to the constituents about what the issues were, but he didn't like to get up and talk at town meeting. And I said, Dad, I think I want to do this someday. So I came back every town meeting after that. So except for when I was in college, I've been to every town meeting in Falmouth since April 1987 when I was 12 years old.
Weren't you like the youngest town meeting member or something like that?
Yeah, so then I went to college at American University, and I came back my spring break of my senior year and got nomination papers to run for town meeting. And then went back to DC. And back then, long distance, we didn't have the cell phones and long distance calls you had to pay for, so I had an AT&T calling card, and I made long distance calls, and I called all the members on the list, except for my 2 opponents, to ask for their vote and to talk to them. And many of them knew me because they had been town meeting members for years, and they remember me being at all the town meetings. And so I actually came back and got elected as a member the week that I graduated, as the youngest member from Precinct 8. And the first meeting, I told the moderator, whenever you're done and you don't want to be a moderator anymore, I'd be interested in running for this at some point. His name was Bob Marshall at the time because Lebhertz had already become a judge.
He had a store on Main Street, didn't he?
Yes, years ago.
A kitchen, like a kitchen supply store or something.
I think so. It was
right across from 10 Acres Bottle Shop.
Okay, yep. So we had a little conversation, and he gave me town meeting time, because we don't use Robert's Rules of Order at town meeting. We use town meeting time. That's the handbook. And he said, read up on this and get ready. It's going to happen quicker than you think. I didn't really know what that meant, but so I read the book and got ready. And a few months later, he actually resigned because he was in the middle of a 3-year term, and he was working then in Boston, and he had a commute, and he decided that it was too much, and somebody was interested, and he thought I could do the job, and he resigned. So in a representative town meeting, when that happens, the members elect on the floor the town moderator, and then you have to go to the ballot in the next town election for the remainder of the term. And so again, I called all the town meeting members and told them why I was interested in running. I gave a little speech on the floor of town meeting. And the election happened on the floor of town meeting, and then immediately I had to take the chair, get sworn in, and run that session. And so that was the only contested race I've had in 26 years. So I don't know if I'm doing a good job or nobody wants the job, but it's very interesting now as a state legislator to also be the town moderator, because it allows me to be right there in the room when the municipality is talking about their issues and making their decisions.
So you're still the moderator?
Still the moderator.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, 26 years now. Yeah.
Wow.
And I need to finish. I just got elected in May for another term, 3-year term. I need to finish this term, and I'll be the youngest in the history and the longest serving in the history. Milford Lawrence served for 27 years back in the 1920s and 30s. So
For the state or just the town of Falmouth?
for the town of Falmouth. I'm the second youngest in the history of Massachusetts, but the youngest in Falmouth. I won't be the longest for a long time, though. We had a gentleman, I can't remember what town he was from. He served 50 some odd years as the town moderator, so I'm about halfway there.
Okay.
So being there at town meeting, I get to see what's going on. So when there's home rule petitions that come up to the legislature, I know both sides of the issue because I've heard the debate. And here in Mashpee with the open town meeting in Bourne, which is also in my district, open town meeting, your town meetings tend to be the same night as they are again this fall. And so I try to rotate between the two town meetings. But because of the wonders of cable access and now on the internet, on demand, I can go into the websites and see those. And particularly when there's a home rule petition that comes to Boston, I like to go back and watch and see what happened at the town meeting if I wasn't there, to really see who was for it, who was against it, what were the arguments, or was it unanimous? And it gives me a better context when it's time to go up to Boston. So right here in Mashpee, you just had one come up to Boston relative to the Boys and Girls Club. Ruth Provost, a former state representative, the executive director since the founding of the Boys and Girls Club here, she's looking to add on. They're looking to do a teen center.
Teen center, yes.
Yeah, and in order to do that, there had to be some land legislation to pass in Boston, and so we did pass that, and the governor signed that, and so we're ready to. Mashpee's ready to move forward with that project.
As you mentioned, you can watch our town meeting anytime on Mashpee TV, live and then rebroadcast.
And then rebroadcast, yeah.
So, we won't even charge you, or anyone else for that matter.
No, it's so great because for folks, if they're interested in knowing what's going on and they just don't have the time to commit to being on a board or committee or something like that, the ability to say, okay, this afternoon I can watch it. It doesn't have to be right at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night when the meeting happens. So it's great to be able to have that. And now I just learned from our pre-show conversation about a high definition channel here in Mashpee, which we don't have in Falmouth yet. We're still fighting to get high definition access on our cable contract.
Well, I hope they do, because it's a big difference. So tell us about the issues you see coming up, in particular in Mashpee.
Sure. So Mashpee is well on the way with your certified comprehensive wastewater plan. As we know, traffic's been backed up here on the streets this year as you're installing your first phase, and so wastewater issues are consistently throughout Cape Cod, not only for water quality in our bays, but also in our freshwater ponds. Right? Phosphorus in our ponds and nitrogen in the bays. And so Mashpee has taken that step. It's plan certified. It's moving forward. And we are working to be able to assist the town to be able to get grants. A few years ago, I joined as a Republican, joined the Democrats on the Cape delegation to pass the Clean Water Trust equivalent here on Cape Cod. So Mashpee is able to draw from those funds, which is a tax on lodging. We have to meet targets that the state has set based on our highest demand. And in many of our Cape communities, our highest demand is in the summer when people are here and renting Airbnbs or going to hotels, so there's not any hotel access here.
Or the seasonal homes.
The seasonal homes, yeah. But the seasonal the homeowners, they're paying into the pool with the property taxes, the owners of those. But when they're rented out seasonally, and those individuals are coming in for the week, they're not putting money into the bin, right? And so we came together, Republicans and Democrats, and proposed this concept that A lodging tax would go into a separate fund on Cape Cod managed by a board that has representatives from all of our towns, and then the towns can draw on that to be able to pay for part of the infrastructure necessary.
And
to
that's
meet
in
the peak
place
demand.
now?
It's in place. I don't have the exact numbers, but Mashpee's been applying and drawing from that. Another smaller project, when the Market Street Extension project happened in Mashpee Commons, we worked with the town, and at the time, Deval Patrick was governor of the Commonwealth. He and I spoke at the groundbreaking there, where we brought a MassWorks grant, $900,000, to help pay for the wastewater infrastructure, to be able to reduce part of the cost of the development, which is commercial space, as well as apartments and deed-restricted affordable units, 25% affordable units there. And so that was one way, and I've done that in Bourne as well, one way that we could help reduce the cost of the construction to be able to make affordable housing, which is another big issue on the Cape, more affordable for the developer by helping with the infrastructure.
That was, one of my next questions is, or my feeling is, clean water is number one right now in our town. It's just my opinion. Close second is affordable housing, both, for seniors, veterans, tribal, workforce. So you started
I think
going
they're
in.
parallel. I think that for me.
Well, I agree.
Yeah.
It's all.
And as you try to create more affordable housing and you increase flow demands of wastewater, and how do you treat that, right, with the new development? And so those things have to be done strategically, which is why I voted in favor of the Homes Act, which allows, the Affordable Homes Act, which allows accessory dwelling units by right, but then we have to look at the flow and demand and make sure that we can capture that. And so another piece of the wastewater, and then we talked a little bit more about the housing. A number of years ago, back in like 2015, when Falmouth was sewering the Little Pond area, our wastewater management committee sought to change the betterment statute under a special act for the town of Falmouth. Now, the betterment statute said that you can bond for these types of projects for 20 years. And those bonds have balloon payments at the beginning, at the front end. You pay more at the beginning than you do later on. And it also had a pass-through of interest, that you had to pass interest on in the betterment. Even if you got a zero interest loan from the state revolving fund, you still had to add a percentage to that. And if you paid 1%, you added a percentage to that. If you had 2% onto that. So the town of Falmouth, through our town meeting, the proposal came from the wastewater committee, and then the town meeting voted to petition the legislature to say, can we take a betterment for 30 years, bond for 30 years, make all of the payments equal over the course of the 30 years, no balloon in the front, and pass on zero interest if we so choose. That would be the select board's decision, if we get a zero interest loan, and then be able to allow individuals to pay for it on the quarterly tax bill. And the legislature agreed that Falmouth could do that. Representative Madden, who's no longer with us, he represented the other half of Falmouth back at the time. He's from Nantucket, but we went in 2016 and proposed a general statute that could be accepted by a town to be able to have this type of betterment on a sewer system. And it's now Chapter 1 of the Acts of 2016. And so I brought it to the town of Mashpee, talked to the select board about this concept, and they brought it to your town meeting and adopted it. And so as you move forward and look to impose betterments, you're able to do this 30-year time frame, equal payments, 4 times a year if you do quarterly, and then pass on a zero interest if you receive a zero interest, which, by the way, a lot of those zero interests you're able to secure not only with the Cape portion of this, but also with the state revolving fund.
But I don't think on phase 1 they're doing the betterment.
No. But you have to accept it before you can then bond and pay it off on that schedule, right? So that's why I said let's get it ready, because as you go forward and look at your other phases, this will be prepared. And if you have to run the financials, you can run the financials over that 30-year period rather than the 20-year period with balloons, so that the taxpayers would know when they go to town meeting to vote on another phase of a project what they're really getting financially into in those situations. So the affordable housing issue, so we just passed that Homes Act, ADUs I mentioned earlier by right, but Really, a big piece of this is also being able to help our housing authorities improve their stock and then expand, right? We have a lot of units, in housing units, that are in the housing authorities across the Commonwealth, where when someone leaves and they go in and do the inspection, they find, well, something's pre-existing non-conforming, or maybe there's something that happened in the unit, and so it doesn't meet code right now, and so they have to do work. And they're cash-strapped, and they can't do the investment that they need to do. And we've seen some units up to a year or more that aren't turned over. And there's wait lists at the authority here in Mashpee. In every town, you have wait lists to get into those units. And the units need work. Where's the money going to come from? And so we have a large pool of money available to the authorities to apply to be able to get the funds so that we can turn these things over. When someone leaves an affordable unit, that unit should be turned over in 30 days to 45 days. Required by law to be turned over in 60 to 90, but you can get an exemption. And when you don't have the money to fix the unit, the state keeps signing off on these exemptions month after month after month. And so that's going to start happening over the course of this next year, where the units, where the authorities will start being able to get access to the funding that's going to be bonded in this project.
How about expanding the stock, as you said?
Yeah, so we want to develop in a way that is sensitive to the community nature, right? So, we don't want to just build out everywhere, right? We enjoy our open space, our conservation land. It's also part of our water resource protection pieces of it. And so we have to look at things like the zoning codes and where can it be more dense, and what type of infrastructure can support reducing the construction cost. And so there's some phases that are happening here in Mashpee Commons to expand housing in there. We're going to cut a ribbon here pretty soon at the LeClaire Village, which is Housing Assistance Corporation. It's that way. Housing Assistance Corporation working with POA to be able to put those units online. And so we need to continue to do that. We need to continue to look at the nature and the character of our communities, because we don't want to just build broadly to get ourselves out of this. Where there's village cores, Mashpee doesn't tend to have the way the community is laid out, the village cores like we do in Falmouth. And in those areas, we're saying, that's increased density in these areas so that we can bring the cost down of the development, which then brings down the cost of either the purchase or the rental.
LeClaire Village is this Friday.
Yes.
Mary's on our board here. Mary and I lived across the street for each other for about 50 years.
And Mary's also a commissioner of the Housing Authority,
right,
by a gubernatorial appointment. Mm-hmm. I've known Mary since I was in high school, actually, when she used to be the county treasurer way years ago.
I knew her when she was manager of the bank here.
Oh, yes.
Barnstable County Bank. So,
yeah. Which was a great precursor for her becoming the county treasurer and then a county commissioner after that.
So what other issues are facing?
So, affordability in general. So whether it's affordable housing or a space that I've done a lot of work since the beginning of my career in the legislature is an early education and care. We had an early education and care special commission back in 2013 that I served on, and we looked at mixed delivery system, public access to child care, but then private providers, whether they're home-based or center-based. I made a series of recommendations when a lot of people in public policy were talking about early education and care. The folks in DESE were talking about it because they want kids ready to learn when they come into the elementary system, but there wasn't a real lot of talk about it. And so we kept pushing that stone up the hill, and then the COVID pandemic hit. And everyone began to realize the importance of a quality early education and care system. And so we impaneled another special commission, the Economic Review Commission for Early Education and Care, and put out a series of recommendations which has led to changes in the last 2 years already in that space to help control, reduce cost, and to get us to the pre-pandemic levels of child care access. A lot of these centers closed down, businesses went out of business, and we just this past year got to our pre-pandemic level of seats throughout the Commonwealth, and we have now expanded. We now have more seats in the Commonwealth than we did prior to the pandemic. But one of the big changes that we did during COVID, the federal government gave some money to the states, and the state passed it through in what we called stabilization grants. It's interesting that when you have a subsidized child care slot, whether it's at a home-based center or a small child care center, where a child has a slot that's being subsidized, or the family might have a voucher and they can choose where to go and take the voucher with them. In those cases, if the child didn't come to daycare that day, the provider didn't get paid. Now, if you can imagine taking the census every day at a public school system and saying, well, if Johnny didn't come or Jane didn't come to school today, the school's not going to get that amount of money to run the schools. How do you manage a budget?
I was going to say, how do you even forecast a budget?
Yeah, exactly, because you don't know exactly what's going to happen, especially if it's a bad flu season and a lot of kids are sick and they don't come in, and all of a sudden you're not getting the money.
Or you have a pandemic.
Yeah, or the pandemic, which again, that's what really put the spotlight on it and allowed us to do this other commission. So what we did is we did these stabilization grants that said they're monitored by the state to make sure that folks aren't getting paid to leave an empty slot, in perpetuity. They do look at the census to make sure that it's within reason of absenteeism. But the subsidy goes for the slot or for the voucher. And if the child misses a day, the provider still gets the 5 days for that week, right? And so that's stabilized for a lot of the child care providers, the business model to help them figure out how to plan ahead and potentially whether or not to take vouchers. Some folks stop taking vouchers because of the system, and we've seen more of the providers that are now taking the vouchers because of the way the system has been changed. So what we did is we did it for 2 years, and then the federal government said no more money, and the Commonwealth said this is going to be part of our system. And so we're funding it now in the Commonwealth with state dollars. And this year, now that we had the millionaire's tax, the surcharge tax for anyone making over $1 million, we've used a portion of that has to be dedicated to education to go into the stabilization grant system. And in this last budget, we actually, by statute, although there's a little clause that says subject to appropriation, but by statute we said this will be the system. This is a permanent way that we're going to manage the system, and then the legislature has to fulfill its responsibility to fund it.
Okay.
The other one that we're looking at is being able to create these associations of childcare providers for bulk purchasing of services and products, right? If everybody has to buy a series of products for their childcare, but you've only got 8 or 10 kids in your center or at your home, if we could get groups together, and we've seen this happen in other parts of the state, where if you've got 300 slots in various providers in a community, and you can bulk purchase for 300 students, young people, you can reduce the cost. And so we're trying to figure out what the best way down here to do that is. What is a coordinating council? We've had some conversations with the Cape Cod Collaborative as a regional entity that has representatives from each town. But we've also talked to some of the private providers to see, is this something that a YMCA or one of the groups like that could help manage. And so we're not there yet, but it's something that we're looking at. And during the Economic Review Commission, we saw that it was successful in other parts of the state.
Good. So, David, we're running out of time here today. We could
Oh,
probably
boy.
talk for
Already.
a while.
Oh my goodness.
But,
new bridges are a big thing.
All right, so, you have a few more minutes, but, let's work on closing it up
Sure.
and giving us your last thoughts.
Sure. So the Cape Cod bridges, you may have already heard that we've secured the funding now for the Sagamore Bridge, and we have a little bit of funding to begin the process with the Bourne Bridge. And now we're continuing to seek the rest of the federal money for the Bourne Bridge. I'm the ranking member of the bonding committee in the Commonwealth, and back in the 2021 Transportation Bond Bill, I had secured in the committee markup the first state appropriation of $350 million for the bridges. That made it into law, and we used that to leverage additional funding from the federal government. So now we have over $2 billion, and the Commonwealth will be putting more in. We're up to $700 million of the Commonwealth money. And really a federal requirement to keep those bridges open, and so they need to do the bulk of repairing their bridges, and then there will be an agreement for the Commonwealth to take over the bridges once they're completed. So that's a big issue that's going to impact all of us. And the opioid crisis is another major issue that,
Agreed.
unfortunately, our conference committee did not report out before the end of session on the opioid bill that we were working on. And if they do it now, it has to be unanimous consent, and it's difficult to get a major piece of legislation through in an informal session. So if we don't get that done, we're going to hopefully in the next term, really at the beginning of the term, focus on what we didn't accomplish. In the last session, the last night was a 23-hour session. We're supposed to end at midnight. The sun came up, everybody had breakfast. We were still working on conference reports and voting, and we left just before lunch.
Wow.
So that's really a focus. And one of the things that I just did this past year, I brought João Galao, who is the National Directorate Chief of the opioid issue in the Republic of Portugal. We brought him to Bristol Community College, and we brought Massachusetts and Rhode Island public health and law enforcement officials together to hear what's happening in Portugal. Portugal is a country of 10 million people, and there were less than 100 opioid-related deaths last year because of their new strategy. We had 2,125 opioid-related deaths in Massachusetts with a population of 6.9 million. And so I'm not saying that the Portuguese experience is the exact experience. What I'm saying is there's some lessons to be learned. And so we created some relationships between the departments of public health in Rhode Island and Massachusetts and Portugal, as well as in the law enforcement community, because we brought the judicial police and the PSP police. The police were against the model in Portugal, and now they're some of the biggest supporters because they've seen how successful it's been for the work that they do in community policing. So that's those are kind of the big things that I'm focused on: the affordability, water quality, the opioid crisis, and the new bridges.
So, David, if people want to find out more about your reelection and more about you, how do they do that?
So they can go to our website, www.votevieira.com, and I know hopefully we'll have a little graphic on the screen because there's all those vowels in my last name. They're on the yellow signs that you see in the community. But votevieira.com, or you give us a call, if you want to reach out, or you have a constituent issue that you need some assistance with as well. Our phone number is 508-548-VOTE, which is 8683. So 508-548-VOTE, 8683. Anytime, we tend to like to go where folks want to meet. I have a district office in Falmouth if you want to come over there. I'll come into Mashpee Commons. Even for some of folks that might be mobility challenged, we've gone to homes to help them process paperwork. Whatever folks are comfortable with, we like to meet them where they're at.
All right, and we want to remind people to get out to vote.
Yeah, so
Whoever you're voting
we got
for.
3 ways to vote now, right? So you can mail in already, even before this show goes live. You can mail in. You can early vote at the towns, and then obviously on Election Day, our traditional Tuesday, November 5th. And so you have plenty of ways to vote. I urge everyone to vote. I hope that over the last number of years here, the 7 terms that I've been state representative, that I've proven through the work that I've done in collaboration with the town of Mashpee and across party aisles in many cases, to do what's right for our district. And I hope that I can have your vote again. I've been working hard to earn your trust, and it is an honor for this kid from T-Ticket to be your state representative. Thank you.
David, thank you for coming in today. Some great insight. It's been great talking to you.
It's amazing how quick a half hour goes by.
It is amazing. So it was a good conversation. So this is Chris Ball from Mashpee TV. Once again, thanking David Vieira, our current state rep and who's up for re-election, urging everyone to go out to vote. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.